The interrogation chamber hummed with alien technology, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent veins that cast eerie shadows across the metallic floor. Commander Marcus Chen sat bound to a chair that seemed to grow from the ground itself, his wrists held by restraints that felt alive against his skin. 3 days had passed since the Zephyrian fleet captured his exploration vessel, and 3 days since they'd been trying to understand what made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. The lead interrogator, a creature called Veltar, stood nearly 8 feet tall with crystalline skin that shifted between blue and purple hues. Its 4 arms moved with mechanical precision as it consulted holographic displays floating in the air around them. What disturbed Marcus most wasn't the alien's appearance, but the genuine confusion in its large, multifaceted eyes. "Your species confounds us. Human," Veltar said, its voice like wind chimes in a storm. "We have studied over 400 civilizations across 12 spiral arms of this galaxy. All follow predictable patterns when faced with extinction. They bargain, they plead, they offer tribute or knowledge. But humans..." The creature's head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Humans laugh." Marcus rolled his shoulders, working out the stiffness from sitting in the same position for hours. The motion caused his shirt sleeve to ride up, revealing a portion of the intricate tattoo that covered his right arm. Dark ink formed the shape of a wolf's head, its eyes seeming to gleam even in the alien lighting. "Maybe we just have a better sense of humor than your previous guests," Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady despite the circumstances. He'd been a soldier before becoming an explorer, and he knew the importance of maintaining composure during interrogation. Veltar's crystalline features shifted in what might have been frustration. "Humor. Yes, we have observed this anomaly in your species, but it is not mere humor that puzzles us. When we destroyed your colony ship above Kepler 442b, the transmission we intercepted was not a surrender. It was laughter. When we cornered your military units on Proxima Station, they did not retreat. They sang." The alien moved closer, its multiple eyes fixed on Marcus. "And when we informed you that your homeworld would be the next target, you smiled." The memory of that moment was still fresh in Marcus's mind. Earth Command had received the Zephyrian ultimatum 2 weeks ago. Surrender all human colonies, submit to Zephyrian rule, or watch their species burn. The response from Earth had been swift and unanimous. Not surrender, not negotiation, but a simple message broadcast to every Zephyrian ship in the system. "Come and take it." "Tell me, Human Chen," Veltar continued, consulting another holographic display, "why does your species not fear death? We have analyzed your biology. You are fragile creatures, short-lived compared to most sapient races. Your bodies break easily. Your minds are limited by primitive neural structures. By all logic, you should be the most fearful species we have encountered." Marcus felt a familiar warmth spread through his chest, the same feeling he'd experienced countless times when surrounded by his unit during dangerous missions. It was the knowledge that he wasn't alone, that somewhere in the vast darkness of space other humans were fighting the same fight. He thought of Sarah, his wife, back on Earth, probably organizing civilian defense groups. He thought of his daughter Emma, too young to fight but old enough to understand that freedom was worth dying for. "You want to know why we don't fear death?" Marcus asked, shifting in his chair again. This time he deliberately pulled his sleeve higher, revealing more of the wolf tattoo. The design was masterful, showing not just one wolf but a hint of others in the background, barely visible but clearly present. "It's because you don't understand what death means to us." Veltar's attention fixed on the tattoo, scanners built into the chamber automatically analyzing the ink and skin. "Explain." Marcus looked down at his arm, at the artwork that had taken 3 sessions to complete. The tattoo artist, an old Marine named Rodriguez, had understood exactly what Marcus wanted without needing detailed explanations. Every line, every shadow told a story that went back thousands of years. "This is a wolf," Marcus said, indicating the tattoo. "My ancestors knew wolves well. They were predators, pack hunters, creatures that could bring down animals 10 times their size. But here's what your databases probably don't tell you about wolves." He paused, meeting Veltar's multifaceted gaze. "They don't hunt alone." The Zephyrian's crystalline skin shifted to a deeper blue, indicating increased interest or possibly confusion. "We are aware of pack behavior in various species. Collective hunting is not unique to your world. No, but our relationship with wolves was unique, Marcus continued. Thousands of years ago, humans and wolves made a choice. We could have remained enemies, competing for the same prey, fighting over territory. Instead, we chose to hunt together. We shared our kills, we protected each other's young. We faced the darkness side by side. Marcus straightened in his chair, and for a moment, the restraints seemed less important. That bond changed us both. Wolves became dogs, our companions, our family. And humans. Humans became something more than just another species struggling to survive. We became the pack that spans star systems. Veltar moved around the chair, examining the tattoo from different angles. You speak of ancient history. What relevance does this have to your current situation? Everything, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. You see individual humans and think we're weak because our bodies are fragile. You think we should fear death because our lives are short, but you're not fighting individual humans. He turned his head, looking directly at his captor. You're fighting the pack. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of alien machinery. Veltar's skin flickered between different shades as internal processing systems tried to analyze this new information. Finally, the creature spoke. Pack loyalty exists in many species. It does not explain your species' apparent disregard for extinction-level threats. Marcus smiled, the same expression that had apparently confused his captors so much. That's because you still don't understand. When a wolf dies defending the pack, it doesn't die alone. Its sacrifice becomes part of the pack's strength, part of their memory, part of their legend. The pack carries that wolf forward into every future hunt. He paused, thinking of the thousands of humans who had already given their lives in this conflict. Their names would be remembered, their stories told, their courage passed down to inspire others. Death wasn't an ending for humans. It was a transformation into something eternal. So when you ask why humans don't fear death, Marcus concluded, it's because death doesn't diminish us, it multiplies us. Every human who dies fighting you becomes a symbol that makes 10 more humans willing to take their place. We don't just hunt together in life, Veltar. We hunt together across generations, across worlds, across time itself. The Zephyrian stared at him for a long moment, its crystalline features impossible to read. Then it turned away, manipulating controls that Marcus couldn't see. Fascinating, Veltar murmured. Perhaps we have been approaching this problem incorrectly. The next day brought a different interrogator, though Marcus suspected Veltar was still observing from somewhere beyond the chamber's shifting walls. This new Zephyrian was smaller, its crystalline skin a pale green that reminded Marcus of seafoam. It introduced itself as Kethron, a specialist in what they called behavioral xenobiology. We have reviewed your statements about pack behavior, Kethron began, its voice higher pitched than Veltar's, almost musical. Our analysis suggests you may be engaging in what humans call psychological warfare, attempting to intimidate through false claims of collective strength. Marcus had slept poorly on the hard surface they'd provided, but his mind was sharp. The brief rest had given him time to think about his situation and what he represented. He wasn't just a prisoner anymore. He was humanity's voice in what might be their final hour. False claims? Marcus asked, genuinely curious about their perspective. What makes you think they're false? Kethron activated a holographic display that filled the air between them with tactical information. Fleet positions, battle reports, casualty numbers, all painted a grim picture for humanity. Your species has lost 63% of its colonial outposts. Your military forces are scattered and outnumbered 50-1. Your homeworld's defenses, while admittedly more robust than anticipated, cannot withstand our full fleet. The numbers were worse than Marcus had feared, but something in the way Kethron presented them caught his attention. There was confusion there, maybe even concern. And yet, Marcus said slowly, you're still trying to figure us out.
If the numbers are so clearly in your favor, why waste time with interrogations?
Why not just finish the job? Kethron's green coloration darkened slightly. Because the numbers, while accurate, do not explain the data we are observing. Your colony on Arcturus Prime was given 12 hours to evacuate before orbital bombardment. Instead of fleeing, the colonists used those 12 hours to fortify their positions and prepare for ground assault. Marcus felt a surge of pride. He'd visited Arcturus Prime 2 years ago during his exploration missions. The colonists were mostly farmers and researchers, people who'd never held military weapons before the war began, but they were human, and that meant something. The colonists on Vega Station, Catherine continued, were offered the chance to surrender and be relocated to a reservation world. Their response was to blow up their own fusion reactor rather than submit. The explosion took out 3 of our heavy cruisers. Sounds like effective tactics to me, Marcus said, though he felt the weight of those lives lost. Each sacrifice was a story, a family, a future that would never be. But it was also inspiration for every human still fighting. Tactics, Catherine repeated as if tasting an unfamiliar concept. Yes, that is what confuses us. These are not trained soldiers making calculated military decisions. These are what you would call civilians. Farmers, teachers, merchants, children barely old enough to hold weapons. Yet they fight with the same determination as your most elite military units. The alien moved closer, its large eyes reflecting the chamber's bioluminescent light. In our experience, civilian populations surrender quickly when faced with overwhelming force. They prioritize survival over abstract concepts like freedom or honor. But human civilians... It paused, consulting its displays. Human civilians fight harder than most species warriors. Marcus thought about his daughter Emma, barely 16 but already training with the civilian defense forces. He thought about Sarah, who'd never fired a weapon in anger before this war but was now teaching marksmanship to neighbors who'd been accountants and shop owners just months ago. Maybe, Marcus said. The problem is that you don't understand what civilian means to humans. Explain. Marcus rolled his shoulders again, drawing attention back to his wolf tattoo. In most species, there's a clear divide between warriors and non-warriors, right? The strong fight, the weak hide. But humans, we never really made that distinction. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Every human farmer who clears land from wilderness is fighting. Every human parent who protects their children from danger is a warrior. Every human teacher who passes knowledge to the next generation is ensuring the survival of the pack. We don't have civilians in the way you understand the term. We have wolves who aren't currently hunting. Catherine's coloration shifted to a brighter green, indicating heightened attention. This contradicts observable behavior patterns in most sapient species. Because most species evolved differently than we did, Marcus explained. Your people, the Zephyrians, you're from a world with abundant resources and few natural predators, right? Your evolution favored intelligence and cooperation, but not necessarily combat readiness. The alien nodded, though the gesture looked strange on its crystalline features. Humans evolved on a death world, Marcus continued. Everything on Earth was trying to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the microbes. We spent millions of years learning that every member of the tribe had to be ready to fight at any moment. Because the moment you let your guard down was the moment you died. Marcus leaned forward as much as his restraints would allow. That teacher on Arcturus Prime who died fighting your soldiers. She spent her whole life fighting ignorance, fighting to give her students the tools they'd need to survive. When your ships arrived, she just changed enemies. The farmer on Vega Station who detonated the reactor, he'd spent decades fighting hostile soil, dangerous weather, and crop diseases to feed his community. Fighting your invasion was just another challenge to overcome. Catherine's displays flickered as it processed this information. You suggest that all humans are essentially warriors, regardless of their designated social roles. I'm saying that the wolf pack doesn't divide its members into fighters and non-fighters, Marcus replied. Every wolf contributes to the hunt in their own way. Some track prey, some drive it toward the ambush, some go for the killing bite, some protect the young. But when the pack is threatened, every wolf shows teeth. The chamber fell silent for several minutes as Catherine manipulated controls and reviewed data. Finally, the alien spoke again, its voice carrying what might have been uncertainty. Our behavioral models predict that devastating losses should reduce a species' willingness to continue fighting. Each defeat should incrementally increase surrender probability. But human resistance actually intensifies after defeats. Marcus smiled grimly. Because you're thinking about this wrong. You see our losses as weakening us, but that's not how pack dynamics work. Every human who dies fighting becomes a debt that must be paid. Their sacrifice doesn't reduce our numbers. It multiplies our motivation. He thought about the memorial walls that were surely growing on Earth and every human world still standing. Names, faces, stories of ordinary people who'd done extraordinary things. Each name would be read aloud at ceremonies, their deeds recounted, their courage celebrated. Not because they were dead, but because they had shown the way forward. Your strategy assumes that fear of death will eventually overcome human resistance, Marcus continued. But you're dealing with a species that turned its apex predator into its best friend. We didn't conquer wolves through superior strength or numbers. We won them over by proving we were worthy packmates. Kethran's green coloration deepened to an almost emerald shade. You are suggesting that humans view this conflict not as a war of conquest, but as, what, a test of worthiness? I'm suggesting, Marcus said, meeting the alien's multifaceted gaze, that you started a fight with a species that's been preparing for exactly this kind of challenge, since the first human looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. The interrogation chambers' walls pulsed with increased activity, bioluminescent patterns racing along the living architecture like neural impulses. Somewhere beyond those walls, Marcus realized, the Zephyrians were beginning to understand that they hadn't invaded a collection of scattered human settlements. They had walked into the territory of a pack that spanned the stars. On the fourth day of his captivity, Marcus found himself face to face with someone completely different. The new arrival wasn't Zephyrian at all, but rather a tall, gray-skinned humanoid with large black eyes and delicate features. Marcus recognized the species immediately from first contact protocols. A keeper, one of the galaxy's oldest and most neutral races. I am Archivist Zenith, the being said in perfect, unaccented English. I have been granted permission to speak with you as an impartial observer. Marcus studied his new visitor carefully. The keepers were known throughout the galaxy as chroniclers and mediators, beings who observed and recorded the rise and fall of civilizations without taking sides. Their presence here suggested something significant was happening beyond the walls of his prison. Permission from whom? Marcus asked. The Zephyrian High Command has requested our analysis of human behavior patterns, Zenith replied, settling gracefully into what appeared to be a chair that formed itself from the chamber's living floor. Your species presents anomalies that concern them. Marcus almost laughed. Anomalies. That's what they're calling it now. Zenith tilted its head in a distinctly human gesture, probably learned from decades of contact with various species. Commander Chen, I have observed the death of 417 civilizations over my 3,000-year lifespan. I have watched species that could move mountains with their minds submit to inferior forces out of fear. I have seen races that could manipulate space-time itself surrender rather than face extinction. The keeper paused, its large black eyes reflecting the chamber's strange lighting. In all that time, I have never witnessed anything like humanity's response to the Zephyrian invasion. Marcus felt his pulse quicken despite his efforts to remain calm. What do you mean? I mean that your species is rewriting the fundamental assumptions about civilizational survival, Zenith said. 3 days ago, your colony ship New Horizon was completely surrounded by Zephyrian forces. 20,000 civilians, mostly families with children. The Zephyrians offered safe passage to a neutral world in exchange for surrender. Marcus waited, knowing there was more to this story. The colonists voted, Zenith continued. 20,000 people, including children old enough to understand, cast ballots on whether to surrender or fight. The vote was unanimous. Not a single person chose surrender. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. 20,000 people, families just trying to build new lives among the stars, had chosen death over submission. He thought of his own family, wondered what choice they would make if faced with the same decision. The New Horizon had no weapons beyond basic mining equipment, Zenith went on. Against a Zephyrian battle fleet, they should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, they held out for 14 hours. How? Marcus asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Improvisation. Creativity. Absolute refusal to accept defeat. The keeper's voice carried what might have been admiration. They turned mining charges into torpedoes. They used construction mechs as fighters. When their ship was boarded, they fought deck by deck, room by room. Children as young as 10 years old were found manning barricades alongside their parents. Marcus closed his eyes, overwhelmed by pride and grief in equal measure. Those children, younger than his own daughter, had faced the darkness without flinching. They had shown teeth. But that's not the most remarkable part, Zenith continued. In the final hour, when the ship was clearly lost, they didn't despair. They sang. 20,000 human voices raised in harmony, broadcasting on all frequencies so that every Zephyrian ship could hear. What did they sing? Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. An ancient human song called Amazing Grace. Are you familiar with it? Marcus nodded, unable to speak. The song was hundreds of years old, a hymn of faith and redemption that had carried his species through countless dark times. To think of those colonists, facing death in the cold void of space, choosing to fill their final moments with that particular message of hope and defiance. The Zephyrians recorded the transmission, Zenith said. They have been studying it for 3 days, trying to understand why a dying population would choose music over surrender. Their xenobiologists are convinced it must be some form of psychological warfare, a technique to demoralize enemy forces. Marcus found his voice again. It's not psychological warfare. It's a promise that we won't be forgotten, that our sacrifice means something, that somewhere in the darkness the pack remembers and carries us forward. Marcus opened his eyes, meeting the Keeper's ancient gaze. When humans sing as they die, we're not trying to scare our enemies. We're calling to our own kind across the void. Zenith was quiet for a long moment, processing this explanation. The Zephyrians believe they can break human resistance through sufficient application of force. They calculate that losing Earth would finally convince your species to surrender. And what do you think? Marcus asked. I think, the Keeper said slowly, that they fundamentally misunderstand what Earth means to humanity. They see it as your species' center of gravity, the loss of which would collapse your civilization. But based on my observations, I believe Earth serves a different function entirely. Marcus raised an eyebrow, curious about this ancient being's perspective on his own species. Earth is not your civilization's heart. Commander Chen, it is your species' memory. Every human carries Earth within them, not as a place they must return to, but as a symbol of everything they are fighting to preserve. Zenith leaned forward slightly. Destroying Earth would not break human resistance. It would remove the last restraint on human fury. The words sent a chill down Marcus's spine. He thought about the careful balance his species had maintained throughout their expansion into space, the deliberate effort to remain explorers and builders rather than conquerors. Earth wasn't just humanity's birth world. It was their moral compass, the reminder of what they were fighting to protect. You've seen this before? Marcus asked. Species that fought harder after losing their homeworld? No, Zenith admitted. Most species collapse entirely after such a loss. But then, most species did not domesticate their world's apex predator and make it a member of their family structure. Most species did not spend millions of years learning to turn every member of their population into a potential warrior. The Keeper stood, preparing to leave. I have one more question, Commander Chen. Your tattoo, the wolf. How common is this imagery among humans? Marcus looked down at his arm, at the intricate artwork that had sparked so much interest among his captors. Wolves, eagles, bears, lions. Predator imagery is everywhere in human culture, not just in tattoos, but in our stories, our songs, our military units, our sports teams. We name our children after predators. We honor them in our art. Because you see yourselves as predators? Because we learned something important from them, Marcus replied. The strongest predators aren't always the biggest or the fastest. They're the ones that hunt together, that protect each other, that never give up once they've chosen their prey. Zenith nodded slowly. The Zephyrians asked me to determine whether human resistance could be broken through conventional means. I will tell them the truth, that they are not fighting a conventional species. They are fighting an entire galaxy's worth of apex predators who have convinced themselves that they are the defenders, not the aggressors. The Keeper moved toward the chamber's exit, then paused. For what it's worth, Commander, I believe your species will survive this conflict, not because you are stronger than the Zephyrians, but because you have turned survival itself into an art form. As the chamber sealed behind the departing Keeper, Marcus found himself alone with his thoughts. Somewhere beyond these walls, his species was fighting and dying and singing in the darkness. Each voice that fell silent was calling to those still standing, reminding them what it meant to be human. The wolf pack was scattered across the stars, but the hunt was far from over. The 5th day brought chaos to the Zephyrian vessel. Marcus felt it before he saw it, the subtle vibrations in the ship's living walls, the change in the chamber's bioluminescent patterns from steady pulses to rapid, almost frantic flickering. Something was happening, and from the way his captor's behavior had shifted, it wasn't going according to their plans. Veltar returned, But this time the tall Zephyrian's crystalline skin showed stress patterns Marcus had learned to recognize. Rapid color shifts between deep blue and angry red. The alien's forearms moved with less precision than before, gestures sharp and agitated. "Your fleet is 3 days from Earth," Veltar announced without preamble. "Our sensors detect massive defensive preparations, but also something unexpected." Marcus kept his expression neutral, despite the spike of anxiety in his chest. 3 days. His family, his daughter, everyone he'd ever known was about to face the full might of the Zephyrian war machine, but there was something in Veltar's tone, something beyond the usual confident superiority. "Unexpected how?" Marcus asked. Veltar manipulated controls, causing holographic displays to fill the space around them. The images showed Earth from multiple angles, surrounded by what looked like a massive construction project. Orbital platforms, defensive stations, and what appeared to be weapons emplacements covered near Earth space in a complex web of metal and energy. "Your species has built defenses far beyond what our intelligence suggested was possible," Veltar said. "In the 3 months since our ultimatum, Earth's orbital infrastructure has increased by 4,000%. Construction ships from every human colony have converged on your homeworld." Marcus studied the displays, recognizing some of the ship designs: mining vessels from the asteroid belt, construction platforms from the outer colonies, even civilian transports that had been converted into mobile factories. It looked like every human in the solar system had abandoned whatever they were doing to prepare for this moment. "Impressive logistics," Marcus said, though his heart was racing. "But you knew Earth would defend itself." "Defenses, yes, but not this." Veltar zoomed in on one section of the orbital grid, revealing something that made Marcus's breath catch. Ships were docked at the construction platforms. Not just human vessels, but alien designs he recognized from his exploration missions. "These are Kepler Republic frigates. These are Centauri collective mining barges. These are even some Andromedan observation pods." Marcus stared at the display, hardly believing what he was seeing. The galaxy's minor powers, species that had maintained strict neutrality in conflicts between major civilizations, were apparently throwing their lot in with humanity. "The Kepler Republic has a non-aggression pact with us," Veltar continued, its color patterns becoming increasingly agitated. "The Centauri collective has been our trading partner for 2 centuries. Why would they risk everything to aid a species they barely know?" Marcus thought back to his conversations with representatives from these smaller civilizations during his exploration missions. They had always been cautious, careful not to offend the major powers like the Zephyrians. But they had also been curious about humanity, fascinated by human culture and philosophy in ways that the more advanced species seemed to dismiss. "Maybe," Marcus said slowly, "they see something in us that you don't." "Such as?" "Hope." Veltar's skin flashed a brilliant red. "Hope? These species are risking annihilation for an abstract concept?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, a puzzle piece clicking into place in his mind. "No, not abstract. Practical. Think about it from their perspective. They've spent centuries watching major powers like you divide up the galaxy, claiming territory and resources, while they get pushed into smaller and smaller spaces. Then humans show up." He paused, organizing his thoughts. "We don't demand submission. We don't claim exclusive territory. When we find other species, we trade with them, learn from them, sometimes even just talk to them because we find them interesting. We treat them like equals instead of obstacles." "This is standard diplomatic protocol," Veltar protested. "No, it's not," Marcus replied firmly. "Standard diplomatic protocol is what you're doing to me right now, trying to understand us just enough to defeat us. But when humans met the Kepler Republic, we spent months learning their poetry. When we encountered the Centauri collective, we helped them develop new mining techniques and didn't ask for exclusive rights to their discoveries." Veltar's color pattern shifted to a deeper blue, indicating confusion or intense thought. "You are suggesting that these species are willing to face extinction to preserve friendship? I'm suggesting they're willing to fight for the possibility of a galaxy where the small guys don't get eaten by the big ones," Marcus said. "Where cooperation matters more than conquest. Where diversity is seen as strength instead of weakness." The holographic displays shifted, showing new images that made Marcus's heart pound. Earth's surface was visible now, and it was covered with lights. Not just the usual city illumination, but vast geometric patterns that seemed to pulse in unison. It took him a moment to realize what he was looking at. Landing zones, he whispered. 50,000 of them, Veltar confirmed. Every major population center, every rural area large enough to accommodate spacecraft. Your people are preparing to receive refugees. Marcus felt tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. Even facing the annihilation of their own world, humans were preparing to save others. Families would open their homes to alien refugees. Cities would strain their resources to provide shelter, and Earth's fragile ecosystem would be stressed to its limits, all to ensure that the galaxy's smaller species had somewhere to go if the worst happened. This makes no tactical sense, Veltar continued. Your world will be easier to defend with fewer inhabitants, not more. Adding millions of non-combatant aliens to your population will strain your resources and compromise your security. But it will preserve them, Marcus said quietly. If Earth falls, at least their cultures, their knowledge, their children will survive somewhere, at the cost of your own survival probability. Wolves protect the pack, Marcus said, touching his tattoo. All of it, not just the members that look like them. Veltar stared at him for a long moment, its crystalline features unreadable. Our psychological models indicate that most species become more insular and aggressive when faced with extinction threats. They prioritize their own survival above all other considerations. But humans expand the definition of their own, Marcus finished. The pack isn't just people who share our DNA. It's everyone who shares our values. The chamber's walls pulsed more rapidly, and Marcus could hear what sounded like communication signals passing through the ship's living structure. Veltar's attention was divided now, receiving information from multiple sources simultaneously. There is more, the alien said finally. Our long-range sensors have detected additional ships approaching Earth. Not the minor powers we expected, but... It paused, manipulating controls to bring up new displays. A Keeper archive ship, an Eternal Observer vessel, even a single representative from the Ascended Collective. Marcus's eyes widened. These were the galaxy's true elder races. Beings so advanced they rarely involved themselves in the affairs of younger species. The Keepers, he understood, they recorded everything. But the others... The Ascended Collective has not participated in galactic politics for over 10,000 years, Veltar said, its voice carrying what might have been awe. They exist on a plane of reality we can barely comprehend. Why would they concern themselves with this conflict? Marcus thought about his conversations with the Keeper, about humanity's unique approach to survival and cooperation. Maybe, he said, they want to see what happens when a pack-hunting species gets loose among the stars. This changes our tactical situation significantly, Veltar admitted. We cannot risk conflict with elder races, but we cannot be seen as weak by withdrawing from a war against a primitive species. Primitive? Marcus laughed, though there was no humor in the sound. You still don't get it, do you? You're not fighting a primitive species. You're fighting an idea that's been spreading through the galaxy since the first human ship left Earth. The idea that cooperation is stronger than conquest, that diversity is more valuable than uniformity, that everyone deserves a chance to hunt among the stars. Veltar's skin shifted to a pattern Marcus had never seen before, rapidly alternating between all the colors he'd observed, as if the alien couldn't decide what emotional state to settle on. If we withdraw now, the Zephyrian said quietly, our entire philosophy of expansion and control will be questioned by other species. If we continue, we risk a conflict with powers that could erase us from existence. Marcus met the alien's multifaceted gaze. Or, he said, you could try a third option, which is? Join the pack. The silence that followed Marcus's suggestion stretched for what felt like hours. Veltar stood motionless, its crystalline skin cycling through color patterns so rapidly they began to blur together. The chamber's bioluminescent walls had gone almost dark, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Join the pack, Veltar repeated slowly, as if testing how the words felt in its alien mouth. Marcus nodded, sensing that this was the most important moment of their entire conversation. Think about it logically. Your entire strategy was based on the assumption that you were fighting a typical civilization, one that would eventually break under pressure and submit to your authority. But we've established that humans don't work that way. Indeed, Veltar agreed, its coloration settling into a thoughtful purple. Our projections show that human resistance will only intensify with each defeat. Complete extermination would require resources we cannot spare without leaving our own worlds vulnerable. Marcus leaned forward, pressing his advantage. And now you've got elder races watching, minor powers picking sides, and a galaxy that's starting to ask questions about why the mighty Zephyrian Empire can't handle one primitive species. He paused, letting that sink in. Your reputation for invincibility is already damaged. The question is, how much more are you willing to lose? The alien moved to the chamber's wall, pressing one of its 4 hands against the living surface. Information flowed across its crystalline skin in patterns of light, probably communications with the command structure. Marcus watched, knowing that decisions were being made far above his pay grade, but hoping his words had planted seeds of doubt in the right minds. There is precedent for negotiated settlements, Veltar said finally. The hegemony wars ended with territorial agreements. The Sigma Rebellion concluded with autonomy arrangements, but those were between equals, Marcus pointed out, or at least between powers that recognized each other as legitimate threats. What makes humans different is that we don't want territory or dominance. We want something harder to quantify, which is freedom to be ourselves, freedom for others to be themselves, freedom to explore, to grow, to make mistakes and learn from them. Marcus thought of the ships converging on Earth, all those different species willing to risk everything for a chance at something better. We want a galaxy where strength comes from cooperation, not conquest. Veltar's skin shifted to a pale blue, almost white. Our society is built on hierarchical structures. Order through strength. Submission to superior force. What you describe would require fundamental changes to everything we are. Not everything, Marcus countered. Just everything that's not working anymore. The chamber fell silent again as Veltar processed this. Marcus could feel the weight of history pressing down on them both. Decisions made in this moment could echo across the galaxy for centuries, determining whether countless worlds would know peace or war, cooperation or conquest. Explain how this pack membership would function, Veltar said eventually. What would the Zephyrian Empire gain from abandoning our expansion policies? Marcus took a deep breath, knowing he was negotiating far above his authority but unable to stop himself. Lives hung in the balance, entire civilizations waiting for an answer to the question of whether the strong could learn to hunt alongside the weak. Security, he said, real security, not the kind that comes from making everyone else afraid of you. When humans form alliances, we don't just sign treaties and hope for the best. We integrate our societies, share our technologies, create bonds that last for generations. He gestured toward the displays still showing Earth's defensive preparations. Look at what's happening right now. Dozens of species that barely knew each other 6 months ago are risking everything to stand together. That kind of loyalty can't be bought or conquered. It has to be earned. And if we joined this pack, what would be expected of us? The same thing that's expected of every pack member, Marcus replied. Contribute your strengths, cover others' weaknesses, and never leave anyone behind. The Zephyrians have incredible military technology and organizational skills. In a cooperative galaxy, those abilities would be invaluable for defense against real threats. Veltar's head tilted at that unnatural angle again. Real threats? Marcus smiled grimly. You don't think humans are the only dangerous species out there, do you? We've heard whispers during our explorations. Things moving in the void between galaxies, civilizations that make the Zephyrian Empire look like a neighborhood watch committee. Someday, we're all going to need each other. The alien was quiet for a long time, consulting displays and presumably communicating with its superiors. When it finally spoke, its voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. The High Command is intrigued by your proposal, but there are practical concerns. Our military forces are already committed to this offensive. Our colonial administrators have prepared for the integration of human territories into our empire. Our entire economy is structured around expansion and resource extraction. All problems that can be solved, Marcus said. Your military forces could become the galaxy's peacekeeping arm. Imagine Zephyrian ships protecting trade routes instead of threatening them. Your colonial administrators could help coordinate refugee resettlement and cultural exchange programs. Your economic model could shift from extraction to collaboration. Veltar's skin flickered through several color patterns before settling on a deep green. You make it sound simple, but the complexities involved are exactly the kind of challenge that makes life interesting, Marcus finished. Look, I'm not saying it would be easy. Humans have been figuring out pack dynamics for thousands of years, and we still screw it up sometimes. But the alternative is a galaxy where everyone stays afraid, everyone stays separate, and eventually everyone dies alone. The chamber's walls suddenly blazed with activity, bioluminescent patterns racing along the living architecture like lightning. Veltar's attention snapped to the information flowing across the surfaces, its crystalline features reflecting the urgent light. "What is it?" Marcus asked, though the alien's increasingly agitated color shifts were answer enough. "Long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic rim," Veltar said, its voice tight with what might have been fear. "Ships of unknown configuration, technology that doesn't match any known species in our databases." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. "How massive?" "Comparative analysis suggests individual vessels larger than our dreadnoughts. Fleet composition appears to number in the thousands." Veltar manipulated controls frantically. "Energy output readings are unprecedented." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. Here they were, discussing the possibility of cooperation just as something appeared that might make their entire conflict irrelevant. He thought of his family on Earth, of all the species converging on humanity's homeworld, of the delicate web of alliances that was forming in response to the Zephyrian threat. "How long until they reach inhabited systems?" he asked. "At current velocity, 18 standard days." Marcus closed his eyes, doing the math. The Zephyrian fleet would reach Earth in 3 days. These new arrivals would appear less than 3 weeks later. Whatever decisions were made in the next few hours would determine not just the fate of humanity and the Zephyrian Empire, but potentially the survival of every known civilization in the galaxy. "Still think cooperation is a luxury we can't afford?" Marcus asked quietly. Veltar's skin had gone almost completely transparent, revealing the complex internal structures beneath its crystalline exterior. "The High Command is requesting immediate strategic consultation. You will be brought before the War Council." As restraints released and Marcus stood for the first time in 5 days, he touched his wolf tattoo one more time. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, something was hunting toward them. The pack would need every member it could get. The real test was about to begin. The Zephyrian War Council chamber was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The space existed at the heart of their flagship, a vast spherical room where the walls, floor, and ceiling were all composed of the same living material that seemed to pulse with the ship's thoughts. Dozens of Zephyrians floated at different levels throughout the sphere, their crystalline bodies supported by fields of energy that allowed them to orient themselves in any direction. Marcus stood on a platform that had grown from the chamber's surface, still flanked by guards but no longer restrained. The change in treatment wasn't lost on him. He was no longer a prisoner being interrogated, but something closer to a consultant being asked for his expert opinion on an impossible situation. High Commander Zethkara dominated the center of the sphere, a Zephyrian whose crystalline form was shot through with veins of silver that pulsed in rhythm with the chamber walls. When it spoke, its voice resonated from multiple points around the sphere, creating an almost hypnotic effect. "Human Chen," Zethkara began, "you have presented us with a paradigm that challenges millennia of Zephyrian doctrine. Before we consider such radical departures from our established order, we require clarification on several points." Marcus nodded, acutely aware that he was speaking not just for himself but for his entire species. The wrong words here could doom both civilizations to mutual destruction, especially with unknown threats approaching from outside the galaxy. "The concept of pack loyalty that you describe," another council member interjected, its body a deep blue with gold highlights. "How would it function between species with fundamentally different biological imperatives?" "The same way it works between humans and dogs," Marcus replied. "We're different species with different needs, but we've found ways to meet those needs together that make both of us stronger." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Humans provide dogs with food, shelter, and medical care. Dogs provide humans with companionship, protection, and assistance with various tasks. Neither species loses its essential nature, but both become more than they could be alone. But dogs were modified through selective breeding to be compatible with human society," the blue Zephyrian pointed out. "Are you suggesting that entire civilizations should reshape themselves to fit your pack model?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "I'm suggesting that civilizations can choose to reshape their relationships with each other. The Zephyrian Empire's strength lies in organization and military power. The human colony's strength is in adaptability and individual initiative. The Kepler Republic excels at artistic expression and philosophical thought. The Centauri Collective has mastered resource extraction and distribution. He gestured toward the displays showing the approaching unknown fleet. Separately, each of our civilizations has weaknesses that could be exploited by a sufficiently advanced enemy. Together we cover each other's blind spots. High Commander Zethkara's silver veins pulsed more rapidly. Your proposal assumes that these approaching vessels represent a hostile force. They may simply be explorers, as your own species was when first contact was established. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. With respect, Commander, when was the last time you saw explorers travel in fleets of thousands of ships with energy outputs that exceed anything in known space? The silence that followed was telling. Every member of the War Council understood the implications, even if they weren't ready to voice them aloud. Assuming the worst-case scenario, Zethkara said finally, what specific advantages would this pact cooperation provide against such a threat? Marcus had been thinking about this question since Veltar first showed him the sensor readings. Diversity of approach. When humans encounter a problem we can't solve with brute force, we try different methods until something works. When Zephyrians face a challenge, you apply superior organization and resources. But what if the enemy is prepared for both those strategies? He moved closer to the center of the sphere, addressing the Council as a whole. What if they've studied the major galactic powers and developed counters for our standard approaches? A pack has dozens of different hunting strategies. Some members drive prey into ambushes. Others wait patiently for the perfect moment to strike. Still others harass and confuse the target until it makes a fatal mistake. You speak of strategy as if warfare were hunting, another council member observed, this one colored in shifting patterns of green and purple. But intelligent species are not prey animals. No, Marcus agreed, but the principles are the same. The strongest predator isn't always the one with the biggest teeth. It's the one that can adapt to changing circumstances and coordinate with its packmates to overcome obstacles that would defeat them individually. Zethkara's form brightened, the silver veins in its crystalline body flaring with energy. Communications from the forward fleet indicate that Earth's defenders are requesting a conference under neutral mediation. They claim to have new intelligence regarding the approaching vessels. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. His people were asking for a meeting, which could mean either very good or very bad news. What kind of intelligence? Unknown. The request came through keeper channels, which suggests they are treating this as a matter of galactic significance rather than a local conflict. That's because it is, Marcus said. Whatever's coming from outside the galaxy isn't going to distinguish between human and Zephyrian territories. We're all in the same boat now. The War Council erupted in conversation, dozens of Zephyrians communicating in rapid bursts of color and sound that created a sensory symphony Marcus could barely follow. He caught fragments, references to historical precedents, tactical assessments, political implications that rippled far beyond the immediate crisis. Finally, Zethkara restored order with a pulse of brilliant silver light. The Council has reached a preliminary decision. We will attend this conference, but not as supplicants seeking alliance with a species we consider inferior. We come as equals, prepared to discuss mutual cooperation in the face of external threats. Marcus suppressed a smile. It wasn't the full embrace of pack mentality he'd hoped for, but it was a start. More importantly, it was an acknowledgement that the old paradigm of conquest and submission might not be adequate for the challenges ahead. There is one more matter to address, Zethkara continued. The approaching vessels. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected additional details. The ships appear to be constructed from some form of dark matter composite, making them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Their energy signatures suggest power sources beyond our current understanding. How far beyond? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Our most optimistic projections suggest they possess technology at least 1,000 years in advance of our own capabilities, possibly much more. Marcus felt the weight of that revelation settle over the chamber like a physical force. 1,000 years of technological advancement was the difference between stone axes and nuclear weapons, between sailing ships and faster-than-light travel. If these aliens were that far ahead, conventional military resistance might be futile. All the more reason to work together, he said quietly. If we can't match their technology, Maybe we can surprise them with our cooperation. They might be prepared to face individual civilizations, but they probably haven't planned for what happens when animals decide to hunt back as a pack. Seth Kara's silver veins pulsed in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as the Zephyrian equivalent of grim amusement. You continue to describe warfare in terms of predation. Very well. If we are to become packmates, as you put it, then we must understand our prey. The High Commander manipulated controls that caused new displays to fill the chamber. Long-range sensor data, energy analysis, trajectory projections. The approaching fleet was vast, disciplined, and moving with the kind of precision that suggested either advanced artificial intelligence or a hive mind structure. 18 days, Seth Kara said. In 18 days we will discover whether cooperation is truly stronger than conquest. Whether diversity of approach can overcome technological superiority. Whether the galaxy's predators can learn to hunt as one. Marcus touched his wolf tattoo one more time, thinking of his family on Earth, of the thousands of species now looking to each other for salvation, of the ancient bond between human and wolf that had taught his species the power of hunting together. Then we'd better make sure we're ready, he said. The pack was forming, but the real hunt was about to begin. The neutral meeting point was a Keeper archive station orbiting the dead star system of Proxima Void, chosen specifically because it belonged to no single species and held significance for all of them. As Marcus walked through the station's ancient corridors alongside High Commander Seth Kara, he marveled at the walls lined with the recorded histories of countless civilizations. Some of those records were all that remained of species that had failed to adapt to changing circumstances. The main conference chamber was a masterpiece of diplomatic architecture, with seating arrangements that accommodated dozens of different body types and environmental needs. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered, not just humans and Zephyrians, but Kepler poets, Centauri miners, Andromedan observers, and even a few species Marcus had never encountered before. At the chamber's center stood Admiral Sarah Chen, his wife, though they maintained professional composure in this setting. She looked older than when he'd last seen her. Lines of stress etched around her eyes, but her bearing was as strong as ever. Beside her stood Archivist Zenith, the ancient keeper who had interviewed Marcus days earlier. The intelligence we've gathered comes from multiple sources, Admiral Chen began without preamble, activating holographic displays that filled the chamber with data. Deep space observation posts, quantum resonance scanners, and information provided by the Ascended Collective. The last statement caused a ripple of attention through the assembled representatives. The Ascended Collective rarely shared information with younger species, considering most galactic politics beneath their notice. The approaching fleet designates itself as the Harvest Collective, Admiral Chen continued. According to Ascended records, they are a species that has consumed 17 galaxies over the past million years. Their method is systematic. Identify the dominant civilizations, eliminate organized resistance, then process all biological and technological resources for integration into their collective. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. 17 galaxies. Countless trillions of beings. Entire civilizations with billions of years of history, all consumed by this approaching threat. Their technology is indeed far in advance of our own, Zenith added, its ancient voice carrying across the chamber. But the Ascended have provided us with crucial insight. The Harvest Collective's strength lies in their ability to counter known tactical and technological approaches. They study their prey extensively before attacking. High Commander Seth Kara's silver veins pulsed with agitation. Are you suggesting that our military preparations are useless? I'm suggesting, Admiral Chen replied, that traditional military preparations are exactly what they're expecting. The Harvest Collective has defeated civilizations far more advanced than any in our galaxy. They've faced hive minds, energy beings, species that could manipulate space-time itself, but they've never faced anything like what's happening here. She gestured toward the assembled representatives, the unlikely alliance of species that had come together in the shadow of the Zephyrian invasion. They've never encountered cooperative behavior on this scale. Their models assume that intelligent species will either submit to superior force or fight according to predictable patterns. But what we're building here... She paused, looking directly at Marcus. What we're building is something new. Marcus stood, feeling the weight of every gaze in the chamber. His wolf tattoo seemed to pulse with warmth beneath his sleeve. reminding him of the bonds that had brought them all to this moment. The Harvest Collective expects to face individual civilizations fighting for their own survival, he said. They're prepared for desperate last stands for advanced technology, for military genius and strategic brilliance. But they're not prepared for what happens when the prey stops running and starts hunting back. He moved to the chamber's center, addressing the assembly with growing conviction. Every species here has something unique to contribute. The Zephyrians have military discipline and organizational structure. Humans have adaptability and individual initiative. The Kepler Republic understands art and philosophy in ways that could confuse enemy analysis. The Centauri Collective knows how to make technology work in impossible conditions. Marcus paused, looking at representatives from species he'd never encountered before. And there are capabilities here that even we don't fully understand yet. Abilities that the Harvest Collective couldn't have planned for because they've never existed in combination before. A new voice spoke from the chamber's upper levels, where a being of pure energy hovered in a containment field. Marcus recognized it as one of the Ascended Collective's representatives, ancient beyond measure. The human speaks truth, the energy being said, its words resonating directly in everyone's minds. We have observed the Harvest Collective's methods across multiple galactic clusters. They succeed through pattern recognition and overwhelming force applied to predictable resistance structures. But the cooperation matrix you have formed? The being paused, its energy field flickering with what might have been amusement. It contains variables that our most advanced models cannot fully calculate. High Commander Zeth Kara rose from its position, crystalline form catching the chamber's light. You speak of cooperation as if it were a weapon. How does mutual assistance translate to military advantage against a superior foe? Pack hunting, Marcus replied immediately. When wolves take down prey much larger than themselves, they don't rely on superior strength or advanced hunting tools. They use coordination, misdirection, and the kind of tactical flexibility that comes from trusting your packmates completely. Admiral Chen activated new displays showing tactical simulations. We've been developing strategies based on that principle. Instead of meeting the Harvest Collective with traditional battle lines, we create scenarios where their technological advantages become less relevant. The displays showed complex three-dimensional battle plans where different species capabilities were woven together in patterns that would be impossible for any single civilization to execute. Zephyrian fleet discipline combined with human unpredictability, Kepler artistic misdirection merged with Centauri industrial improvisation, all coordinated through Keeper information networks and guided by insights from the Ascended Collective. The key insight, Zenith explained, is that the Harvest Collective's strength comes from their ability to analyze and counter specific threats. But they cannot analyze cooperation patterns they have never encountered. When wolves hunt together, the prey cannot predict the attack because it comes from directions and in combinations that individual predators could never achieve. Marcus felt the energy in the chamber shift as understanding dawned on the assembled representatives. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that cooperation could triumph over conquest. That diversity was stronger than uniformity, that the bonds between different species could create something greater than the sum of its parts. 17 days, Admiral Chen announced. In 17 days, the Harvest Collective will reach our outer defense perimeters. We have that long to transform ourselves from a collection of separate civilizations into something new, something they've never faced before. High Commander Zeth Kara's form blazed with silver light. The Zephyrian Empire formally requests membership in this Pack Alliance. Our fleets and resources are at your disposal. One by one, other representatives rose to make similar declarations. The Kepler Republic, the Centauri Collective, dozens of smaller species, all committing their civilizations to an experiment that had never been attempted on such a scale. As the chamber filled with the sound of 100 different species pledging their loyalty to the pack, Marcus thought of his daughter Emma, probably training with Earth's defense forces at that very moment. She would grow up in a galaxy where cooperation was stronger than conquest, where different species hunted together among the stars. The wolf tattoo on his arm seemed to pulse with warmth, and Marcus could almost hear the howl of the pack echoing across space and time. The Harvest Collective had consumed 17 galaxies, but they had never faced prey that refused to run. The hunt was about to begin, and this time, the predators would discover what it meant to become the hunted. In the darkness between stars, ancient bonds forged in firelight and strengthened across millennia were about to be tested on a galactic scale. The pack had formed, the territory was marked, and the greatest hunt in the history of the universe was 17 days away. They had asked why humans didn't fear death. Now the galaxy would show them the answer, because when you hunt together, death becomes just another obstacle to overcome, another challenge that makes the pack stronger, another opportunity to prove that cooperation conquers all. The wolf pack had grown to encompass the stars, and it was time to hunt.